He's right, Jamie. Everything has changed with this Irish team. They don't fear New Zealand maybe in the same way that they would have even 4 years ago.
No, not at all. They've beaten them pretty consistently for the last few years. They have a load of momentum now from the last 18 months in general. They're on the biggest ever streak they've been on before, but even from this competition. And it's just worked out brilliant for them. They had to kind of really peak for that South Africa game. They kind of had a bit of time off, and now they're building again, and they've kept that momentum going through. And the fact that pretty much they could take everyone off the field that they need to take off after 50 minutes and save their legs, particularly with that turnaround time, New Zealand getting 2 extra days. It's all fallen really, really well for them. And you're right, in terms of psyche, they will not fear these guys at all. And that will be huge coming into this week. It's needed as well. You need that confidence. And you have to be able to back yourself as well, because, you know, when asked the question there, what do they need to do? They need to carry that ruthless efficiency that they have, because there's not going to be many moments that you get against a quality side like New Zealand, but you've got to be able to take them. And this side have just shown consistently that's what they can do.
They've put themselves in this position over the last number of years. It's not just this World Cup, but they're on an 18-game winning streak if they win at the weekend. Only 2 teams have done that before, England and New Zealand. So this is now the category that this team are in. It's not just about the quarter-final. It's about what they've done to get to here.
Yeah, and it makes it's kind of an obvious thing to say, but wasn't really spoken about before. You know, if you're going in to play New Zealand in a Rugby World Cup and you've never beaten them in the history of rugby, like, you do believe that you can do it. But you know, it's quite unlikely as well. This group, they're not the biggest. They're not scared of anyone, and they've no reason to be scared of anyone. They've beaten everyone. I think a lot of teams, New Zealand, interesting to hear them. They're sort of, the narrative they're spinning is that they're happy enough to be playing Ireland. I do think there will be a bit of bite from wanting to knock us off our perch from last summer. But I think, like, and it's hard as like a pundit, you're coming into these games and people think you're being arrogant because you're back in Ireland, and it's not about being disrespectful to the opposition. I think New Zealand are really, really coming good, but I just believe that Ireland, like, some of their accuracy is absolutely off the chart, and I believe if they are able to execute with that level of accuracy, I'm not sure any team would beat them. And interesting, Donal saying they have more gears across 80 minutes, yes, but across 30 minutes or 38 minutes, I don't think so. I thought last night they were unbelievable, both sides of the ball, and it ended up that the second half was a bit disappointing because the whole thing was over.
Yeah, it was done. Can I ask you about that narrative that Darren's talking about there? I heard Bowden Barrett saying, you know, oh, we've got one, you know, we want Ireland because of what happened. And you do wonder if there's a bit of needle there, that maybe they feel they heard Ireland saying, yeah, we want New Zealand, we'd prefer them other than France as well. That has to have got in there a little bit as well.
I think it meant the Irish people that are probably down in New Zealand telling them that, and telling it to them for the last 12 months. New Zealand done a really good job. They've kind of flown in under the radar, right? They had a big opening game, and then, you know, they've been able to manage their squad pretty well and get them humming. Now, there's question, like, will they be undercooked versus a battle-hardened Ireland? That's going to be something coming into the fray. But, you know, they do have someone called Joe Schmidt in their coaching staff who will be, you know, I get shudders thinking about the analysis that he's going to be doing on these players, because he knows them so well and knows the way they're playing. But the big difference, I think, is playing against this New Zealand side. I think our pack will dominate their pack, and that's really important, because that will give us momentum in terms of carries. It will give us momentum in terms of our set piece and what we can do to their set piece as well. And that will slow them down, their attacking prowess, because with New Zealand, if you keep giving them loads of quick free ball, they've got class players and they'll cut you apart. But I don't think Ireland are going to give them that. However, New Zealand are going to find it harder to slow us down. And the way the Southern Hemisphere teams tend to defend, particularly in New Zealand, which is they don't mark the space, they tend to mark the man as such. And I think if you watch last night's play, some of the tries came about because of the work off the ball by the players to create the overlap. Like, I think it's Dan Sheehan's try there that you see James Gibbs-Park. He carries in on the wing on one side, gets up out of that ruck, works his butt off to get around, and actually makes the pass then to put him away in the corner. And that's just hard work and street smarts. And I think the way New Zealand defend, they're going to struggle if they can't slow Ireland's ball down. And I think everyone is finding it hard to slow Ireland's ball down.
If that's one element of it, the big power play with the pack, New Zealand do have always had some of the best backs in the world. And if you look at maybe what the dice that Ireland might be rolling with who we have fit and who we don't have versus what they have, are the aces slightly in their pocket?
It's really hard to know, and the more you sort of go around and the more you think about it, it's tough because we just don't have the information about who's injured and who's not. So part of me thinks it has the makings of a catastrophe, genuinely, if Lowe, Hansen, Earls and Henshaw are all out. And not to exclude, like, James Ryan would weaken any team, but if all four of those players are out, it is a bit of a catastrophe. However, we could get an injury update tomorrow to say that all four of them are expected to be fit, and it's really, really hard to tell. It's not ideal that Jimmy O'Brien hasn't played, and it looks like, on the basis of probability, he may be involved this weekend. But listen, I think big picture, provided we don't get bad news on all four of those players, we probably have a fitter squad than most other teams at this stage of the tournament. I think we love to paint this picture that we don't have depth just because we're Irish, but we do have depth. We have a lot of really good players.
And to be fair, Jimmy O'Brien played against South Africa in November and was brilliant. I know he's only had 7 caps, but he was superb then. I don't think anybody in Ireland, if Jimmy O'Brien was playing, would say, oh, that weakens the team.
No, and I think Lowe is probably going to be fine. We'll see how Hansen is, depending on how that pans out. And then we'll see what the permutations are. And I actually think, in a really weird way, anything that gets thrown in this squad in terms of last-minute changes, injuries, anything like that, they take it in their stride. I think Andy always frames that really well in terms of another challenge thrown against them. And any challenge that's been put in front of them, they've overcome it. And he's got to back the squad as well. He's got to back the depth. He's got to back the players that he has. It'd be quite interesting if he has to bring over players who he's bringing. We were talking about it off air. If James Ryan, for example, goes home, I actually think we're really strong around the second row or back five in the pack. And I think there's an outside chance he then might actually bring someone like a Cian Healy over in that case, actually, as opposed to a out-and-out second row. But look, we don't know how that's going to pan out, but I have the feeling that Andy will back who he has over there, and Jimmy O'Brien is a great player to use.
Yeah, it's a great week to look forward to, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I actually completely agree with Jamie. We've all become doctors, and we've all seemed to have ruled James Ryan out. But I do think Cian Healy, a separate argument, like Cian Healy, how fit will he be versus Kilcoyne or Loughman? But there's a series of events where actually your squad, I wouldn't say strengthened, but you know what I mean. Cian Healy in that squad adds huge value. It's just incredibly exciting, and hopefully we get some good injury news, and hopefully, obviously, the game goes well.
Yeah, fingers crossed on all of the above.